We've been in this series that we started last Sunday called Boldly Praying. And last week we looked at praying these bold prayers without putting any asterisks in there where God never intended them to be, not putting any fine print or legalese and say, well, maybe there's some conditions about this, but truly taking God at His word. And over the next couple of weeks, what I want to start to show you is some very bold prayers. Some bold people that we see on the pages of Scripture that prayed some incredibly bold, audacious, no asterisks kind of prayers and really believed God for what He said that He was going to do. Now, have you ever been, I hope that you've experienced this in your life, have you ever been in that place where you are at the right place at the right time? You're at the right place at the right time and something really cool happens. Maybe you got the job, you met somebody that you were hoping to meet, or somebody that you never even suspected that you would meet. Maybe you got that ride in that really cool car. There was something that happened, and you just happened to be right there, right moment, right time, and something happened to you that was amazing. Now, some people on the outside that are looking at that, they might say, "Oh, lucky. You caught a break there. Man, that was," or some people, you might hear this phrase sometimes, "Well, that was, because of what you were doing, that was some good karma that came your way." But here's the problem that I have with a lot of those phrases, saying that you were lucky or you caught a break or something like that. All of those imply that something unexpected happened. Right? That nobody planned for this to happen and you just happened to be there. But what if you knew that it was coming? What if you knew that something was coming? Then when you got to that right moment, that perfect moment at that perfect time, would you still say that you were lucky? No, I think if you knew that it was coming and you got to the right moment at the right time, you might give it a different description. Last week we looked at this verse that David wrote for us. "In the morning, Lord, you hear my voice. In the morning I lay my request before you and wait expectantly." The Aramaic definition for the word prayer literally means to set a trap. It means that after I pray, I'm waiting to see what that prayer is going to capture. What's going to happen for me? And I'm walking around in expectation. "Lord, I laid this before you. I know that you heard my voice. Now I'm just waiting. I'm looking. Where is it going to be?" So if I've prayed the prayer and I'm waiting in expectation, then when I get to the right moment at the right time, it's not luck. It's an answer to prayer. When I got to the right moment at the right time because I'd been praying for it, that right moment, right time was God's answer to my prayer. But we need to be living in that expectation. Don't get caught by surprise going, "Oh, wow, that was a lucky break. I wasn't really expecting that to come my way." Why weren't you expecting it to come your way? What happens if you change it and you're walking around in this expectation saying, "I believe that God has something coming for me. I'm just waiting to see when I get to the right time at the right place. I know that it's coming because I already prayed for it. I laid my request before God, and now I'm walking it out in expectation." I want to show you a couple of people that this happened for them. And the reason why I want to show you two people is because the first guy we're going to look at, we don't really have a whole lot of information about him. We just kind of see the end, and we don't really see what led up to that, but it's a really cool story. In Hebrews chapter 11 is where the writer of Hebrews, in kind of his hall of fame of faith, lists this guy. He says, "By faith, Enoch was taken from this life so that he did not experience death. He could not be found because God had taken him away. For before he was taken, he was commended as one who pleased God." That phrase, "he was commended as one who pleased God," intrigues me. What is it about Enoch's life that God looks at him and says, "You pleased me"? What was going on there? Well, if we go back to the very first book of the Bible, we go back to the book of Genesis, we can find a little bit more information about Enoch, not a whole lot more. His name and his really the kind of the sum total of his biography shows up in a genealogy. Moses is writing for us this genealogy that goes from Adam all the way to Moses. And in the middle of there, we come across this. When Enoch had lived 65 years, he became the father of Methuselah. And after he became the father of Methuselah, Enoch walked with God 300 years and had other sons and daughters. Altogether, Enoch lived 365 years. Enoch walked with God, then he was no more because God took him away. God took him away. He couldn't be found anymore because he just was gone. But so the writer of Hebrews says he was commended before God took him away. He was commended as one who pleased God. What did he do that pleased God? I think the phrase shows up twice in this little brief biography of Enoch that says this: Enoch walked with God. What pleases God? For you to walk with him. Because when you walk with him, you're taking him at his word. When he says, come this way, you say, okay, I'll walk with you. And you're walking now in this expectation. If I'm walking with God, what's going to happen? When am I going to get to the right place at the right time? What is God going to do? And here's Enoch walking with this guy. Now, you say, well, okay, well, that was Enoch, and that was a long time ago. But, there's really the same thing applies for us today. This writer of Hebrews gives us a little insight into it, but I also like what Paul reminded us of. He says, we walk by faith and not by sight. We don't see it with these natural eyes. We see it with the eyes of our heart, and we walk it out. Now, the very next verse in Hebrews 11, after he tells us he was walking with God and he was no more. God took him because he was commended as one who pleased God because he was walking with him. But look what this next verse says. It's for all of us. It's not just for Enoch. It's impossible to please God apart from faith. And why? Because anyone who wants to approach God must believe both that he exists and that he cares enough to respond to those who seek him. I think this definition of faith is really good. This is from the Message, so this is Eugene Peterson's paraphrase of this. I like this. I love finding the both and statements in the Bible. And here it is. Here's the definition of faith. You both believe that God exists and, what else? That he cares enough to respond to you. Now, there's a lot of people that believe that God exists, but they are not really sure that God wants to have anything to do with them. They're not really sure that if they pray that prayer that God really wants to answer that prayer. But the definition of faith is to believe both that he exists and that he cares enough to respond. So Enoch said, I believe that God exists and I'm going to walk with him. And I believe that he's going to respond to, what did they talk about as they walked? I don't know. The Bible doesn't tell us. They just walked and they talked, and I think that every day maybe they walked a little bit farther and a little bit farther, and at some point God just said, you know what, Enoch, you're closer to my house than your house. Let's just go to my place. He just walked with him because he believed not only that he existed, but he believed that God cared enough to respond to him. And that's how we're called to live as well. We walk by faith with God. Now, with that in mind, I think we can say this. Our daily walking can be our daily praying, as long as we're walking in the direction that God is taking us. The way that we walk every day can be a part of our prayer, a part of our expectation that God's going to answer the prayer. That we're saying, hey, is this next step going to put me at the right place at the right time? How about this next one? Oh, maybe it's the next one. We live in that constant expectation. We keep walking with him, and our daily walking becomes our daily praying, which is our daily setting the trap of expectation. Where's it coming? How's God going to move? I believe that he exists, and I believe he cares enough to respond, and so I'm just going to keep walking. I'm going to keep walking and believing that the next step could be the one. The next step could be the one. And you're going to arrive at that perfect moment, at that perfect time, and it's not luck. It's an answer to prayer because you're walking in the direction that God has called you to walk. There's another guy that we meet in the pages of Scripture that had a similar encounter. But this guy, we get a little bit more of the historical background. Like I said with Enoch, basically the verses that I showed you are pretty much all that exists in the Scripture about him. There's not a whole lot of background. We don't really know. We got to fill in some blanks there with our own imagination. But there's another man named Elisha. And Elisha walked out his faith, and he was daily walking and daily praying as he's heading towards that moment that God has for him. But I want to show you, before we look at his story, I want to show you what his prayer request was. What was it that he was walking toward? Just like David, he laid his request before the Lord, and then he walked it out in expectation. What exactly was that prayer request? He is with his mentor, the prophet Elijah. They have just crossed the Jordan River, and they're walking through the wilderness together. They're just walking along, and they're talking. And then we come to this exchange where you'll see his prayer request. They reached the other side of the Jordan River. Elijah said to Elisha, "What can I do for you before I'm taken from you? Ask anything." That kind of fits with what we saw last week that God said, and those words of Jesus. "You ask anything according to my name." Elisha said, "Your life repeated in my life. I want to be a holy man just like you." Now, some translations have this: "I want a double portion of your spirit." Sounds like he's saying, "I want twice what you have." Does that sound like a greedy prayer to you? I know you got this, but I want twice as much. Give me twice. Does that sound greedy? Well, what he's asking for is actually a legal terminology, a double portion. When a father passed on his estate to his children, the firstborn son got what was called a double portion, which means they got twice as much as all of the other heirs got. So that's really what Elisha is asking for. He's saying to Elijah, "Would you consider me your son and your heir, your successor to this, and would you give me not twice what you have, but would you give me the legal standing as your heir and give me a double portion, give me twice as much as you're going to give to anybody else?" Now what do you think? Does it still sound greedy? Well, here's the reason why that firstborn son got a double portion, is because by getting the double portion, by agreeing to that, they also agreed to two things. They agreed to take care of all of the other family members, and they agreed to carry on the family name, to represent the family name as well. So when Elisha is asking for this, he's not saying, "I want stuff." He's saying, "I want to take on the responsibility. I want to carry on your name. This godly legacy that you've lived out in your life, Elijah, let me carry that name on for you." And the way that Elijah responds is, "You've asked a really tough thing. You've asked something really big." But that's the prayer request. I want you to see how it came about. In 2 Kings chapter 2, it says, "The Lord was about to take Elijah up to heaven in a whirlwind. Elijah and Elisha were on their way from Gilgal." Now, Gilgal is a very important city. It's the very first city that the Israelites occupied back in the day of Joshua, when they also crossed the Jordan River. Miraculously, God stopped the river flowing for them so they could cross over. When they came to Gilgal, and they've now entered into the promised land, that was the spot where it became not only their military headquarters, but it was also a reminder for them, because when they got to Gilgal, that was when God stopped giving them the manna that they had had every morning for 40 years. In the wilderness, I had to provide this for you every day because you couldn't grow any crops, you couldn't harvest things out here in the wilderness. But now that you're in the promised land, everything that I've set up for you is here. So Gilgal always had this strategic and this special place in all of the hearts and minds of the Israelites, because that was their first entry point into the promised land. And they were going to move on from there. And so Elijah says to Elisha, "Stay here. The Lord has sent me to Bethel." Not us, but he sent me. Elisha God's given me a call in my life, and he's called me. I need to go on. So you just stay here. But Elisha says, as surely as the Lord lives, and as you live, I will not leave you. So they went down to Bethel. Elijah said, God's called me, but Elisha said, if it's you, it's me too. So they went down to Bethel. Now Bethel, it's probably better if we say the name Bethel. The word Beth in Hebrew means house, and El is God. So Bethel is the house of God. This was a very important place also for the Israelites. This is the place where Jacob met with God overnight. The angel of the Lord wrestled with him. So this is the place where God changed Jacob's name from Jacob the deceiver to Israel, the one who is without guile, the one who is my son. So really the birth of the Israelite nation takes place here at Bethel. And there's prophets that are there. The company of the prophets at Bethel come out to Elisha and ask, do you know that the Lord is going to take your master from you today? Yes, I know, Elisha said, but do not speak of it. Same thing is repeated here. Then Elijah said to him, stay here, Elisha. The Lord has sent me to Jericho. I need to go on. And Elisha responds the same way. As surely as the Lord lives and as you live, I will not leave you. So they went to Jericho. Jericho is a wonderful place too. Its name means the house of fragrance. It's another place where the company of prophets were. This was a place that you could be just ensconced in the pleasures of this life, as well as the spiritual aspects, because the priests were there as well. A very large company of priests, as you'll see in a moment. The company of the prophets at Jericho went up to Elisha and asked him, do you know that the Lord is going to take your master from you today? Yes, I know, he replied, but do not speak of it. Same thing. Then Elijah said to him, stay here. The Lord has sent me to the Jordan. And he replied, as surely as the Lord lives and as you live, I will not leave you. So the two of them walked on. 50 men of the company of the prophets went and stood at a distance, facing the place where Elijah and Elisha had stopped at the Jordan. Elijah took his cloak, rolled it up, struck the water with it. The water divided to the right and to the left. The two of them crossed over on dry ground. When they had crossed, Elijah said to Elisha, so here's the prayer request again that I showed you. Tell me what I can do for you before I am taken from you. Let me inherit a double portion of your spirit, Elisha replies. Elijah says, you have asked a difficult thing. You're asking something of me that I can't give you. Only God can give this to you. Now, all of this time, Elisha is walking right next to Elijah. He won't be dissuaded. He won't settle anywhere. Not at Gilgal, the strategic city. There was a great reminder for the Israelites of former conquests. Not at Bethel, where the nation of Israel is really born and established. The house of God, being around the people of God. Not in Jericho, the place of beautiful fragrance and the place where there's even a larger company of prophets. Not even Elijah saying, hey, God has called me to go somewhere. You don't necessarily have to go with me. You could stay at any one of these places and you'll be fine. You could stay at Gilgal. You could stay at Bethel. You could stay at Jericho. All these places will be fine. Except they wouldn't be fine. Because Elisha is walking towards the answer to his prayer. If you go back in 1 Kings, Elijah was at a really low point in his life, battling depression. He got to the spot where he said, God, what am I even doing? I think I'm all by myself. I don't think that there's anybody else in all of this nation that follows you. Why don't you just take me home? It's time for me to just be done. This is fruitless work. And God has to deal with his heart there and reassure him that his work is profitable and that he is not all alone. But God also recognizes that Elijah needs help. And so he says to him, as he sends Elijah back, verse number 16 of 1 Kings 19, he says, also anoint Jehu, son of Nimshi, king over Israel, and anoint Elisha, son of Shaphat from Abel Mahola, to succeed you as prophet. What's he telling Elijah right there? Anoint him to be your heir, to be your successor, to be, in essence, your firstborn that is capable of receiving, legally able to receive now the double portion. Anoint him to do that. Spiritually, this can take place. So, Elijah went from there, and he found Elisha, son of Shaphat. He was plowing with 12 yoke of oxen. Now, let me just, little side note here. This means Elisha's family is very wealthy. They have at least 12 pairs of oxen. This is not just a small little rinky-dink operation. They have a big farm. Okay? And he himself was driving the 12th pair. Elijah went up to him and threw his cloak around him. Threw his cloak around him. Elisha left his oxen, ran after Elijah. Let me kiss my father and mother goodbye, and then I will come with you. Go back, Elijah replied. What have I done to you? So Elisha left him, went back, took his yoke of oxen and slaughtered them. He burned the plowing equipment to cook the meat, gave it to the people, and they ate. Then he set out to follow Elijah and became his attendant. He turned his back on all of the wealth and the prestige of his family. He said goodbye to his family. And to make sure that he couldn't come back anymore, he burned his plows, he cooked his cows, and he was on his way. And said to Elijah, I will be your attendant. And so now you can understand why at every one of these places, when Elijah says, Elisha, this would be fine for you to stay here, that he says again and again and again, as surely as the Lord lives and as you live, I will not leave you. God has given me this promise that I am going to be your son, that I'm going to be your spiritual heir, and I'm not going anywhere. And so, in verse number 11, as they were walking along and talking together, and I like how the Amplified Version even says, as they were still walking and talking, even up to the very last, he just kept walking and talking and saying, I'm staying with you, Elijah. And then we come to this word, suddenly. Oh, man. Elisha, it was really good. It's a lucky break for you that you happened to be there when this took place. Was it suddenly? Was it unexpected? No, this is what Elisha had been walking toward ever since Elijah first came up to him and put his cloak over his shoulders. Suddenly, a chariot of fire and horses of fire appeared and separated the two of them. And Elijah went up to heaven in a whirlwind. Elisha saw this and cried out, my father, the chariots and horsemen of Israel. And Elisha saw him no more. Then he took hold of his own clothes and tore them apart. He picked up the cloak. Remember when Elijah first called him? He put his cloak around his shoulders. He picked up his cloak that had fallen from Elijah and went back and stood on the bank of the Jordan. Then he took the cloak that had fallen from him and struck the water with it. Where now is the Lord, the God of Elijah? He asked. When he struck the water, it divided to the right and the left, and he crossed over. The company of prophets from Jericho who were watching said, the spirit of Elijah is resting on Elisha. Listen, friends. Elisha literally walked out his prayer. Literally. He put one foot in front of the other day after day, week after week, month after month, year after year, right alongside Elijah and said, I will not leave you. I will not stop at this place called Gilgal. I will not stop at Bethel. I will not stop at Jericho. I'm not even going to leave myself an out to go back to the wealth and the comfort and the security that my parents' farm provided for me. Because God has called me to something. He has laid it on my heart that this is what he's going to do, that I'm going to be the spiritual heir to Elijah, and so nothing will dissuade me. And he literally walked that out. He wouldn't settle for anything less. When you start to pray for something, listen closely. What is God giving you as the promise for you to claim? Once you pray, start walking. Start walking in expectation. Start putting one foot in front of the other and say, is this going to be the place where God's going to do it? Is this going to be the place? Don't sit back there and say, well, as soon as the whole path becomes clear, God, as soon as you circle the date on my calendar and tell me when it's coming, then I'll be there. As soon as you bless me, then I will start doing this. As soon as you show me this, then I will start doing this. We walk by faith and not by sight. This is what commended Enoch to God. This is what commended Elisha to God, is that by faith they walked and walked and walked, and their daily walking became their daily praying. Because every step that they took, they're like, is this the one where God's going to bless? Is this the one? And so when we get to that part where it says, suddenly, it's not a lucky break. It's not, oh, he just happened to be. No, he was there because he was expecting to be there all along the way ever since Elijah called him. Settling anywhere else does two things. It not only robs you of a blessing, it robs God of his glory. If you stop at Gilgal and say, well, this is a nice strategic place and I like this city. If you stop at Beth El, even the place where God's house, the house of God, Beth El, there's godly people there. This has got to be a great place for me to stay. Or Jericho, the house of fragrance. And there's even more godly people here. Those are all settling for less than what God has for you. You're robbing yourself of the blessing that he has, and you're robbing God of the glory that he wants to give you. So when you pray, say, God, what is the promise that you're giving me? What can I stand on? Are you praying for the salvation of a loved one? Are you praying for God to open the door for a job? Are you praying for the finances that are necessary for something? Are you praying that God would give you wisdom? Are you praying that God would give you a city for his glory? That you would be able to capture that city and tell people about Jesus throughout that town? What has God given you? What promise does he lay on your heart? What cloak does he lay around your shoulders? And when you have that, then it's time to get up from your knees and just keep walking. Don't settle for anything less. Don't settle for a Gilgal where there was a military victory. Don't settle for a Bethel where there was a vision of God. Don't settle for a Jericho where it's a fragrant place and a comfortable place. Don't even settle when you get to the river and you go, well, I can't go any farther. The river's flowing and I can't get across it. Don't settle anywhere. Now, you know what the amazing thing is? Even though I told you that a double portion doesn't necessarily mean that you get twice as much as the other person, the Bible records for us 8 miracles that Elijah did throughout his life. And then the Bible records 15 miracles for Elisha. Unless you think that God is a little short on his math, God decided to really give him the double portion and did one more miracle through Elisha's bones after he was dead to make it a full 16, exactly double of what Elijah had done. That's what God wants to do for you. He wants to give you the double portion. He wants to give you the blessing that don't settle for anything less than the blessing. What he lays on your heart. Be bold enough to keep walking expectantly every day. Is this the place? Is this the step? Which step is going to be the exact right place at the exact right moment? Wait in expectation. Walk in expectation. Wait for God to do what he promised you he was going to do. Don't settle for anything less than what he told you that he was going to do. And in the absence of any other word from him, there's no, in the life of Enoch, we don't know what Enoch and God talked about. God might have even been silent for all we know. And Enoch just kept walking the direction that God pointed him. We're not really sure. Sometimes God's going to give you a promise as you pray, and he's not going to speak it to your heart again. Just keep walking. What direction did he point you? Just keep walking. Because you never know when the next step is going to be the suddenly step. It's not going to be a lucky break. It's not going to be, oh man, you really caught something and you happened to be there. No, I was expecting to be here because I kept taking another step, and another step, and another step, walking in faith, pursuing the promise that God gave me. Let's bow in a word of prayer, shall we? Friends, some of you are facing monumental situations. Mountain-size situations. And I don't even want to call them problems, because when we say problems, that's really kind of a limited mindset human term. I think they're Might be monumental opportunities for God to show how powerful He really is. There might be relationships that you long to be restored, and you say, there is no way. I don't see any way that that relationship can be restored. What's God's word on that? Has He said that He wants to restore that relationship? Then just keep walking. There might be a dream in your heart that you know that God planted there. Maybe it was years ago. Maybe it was even decades ago. Maybe that dream has almost died. Maybe you've just about given up on it because you've felt like the time has passed. The window of opportunity is closed. If God gave you that dream, just keep walking. Are there children or parents or loved ones that don't have a relationship with Jesus? And God has laid on your heart to pray for them and has even shown you and given you the faith to believe that He wants to save them, that He will save them. And it appears to you that they're running 1,000,000 miles an hour the exact opposite direction of God. Just keep walking. Don't settle. Don't camp out at Gilgal, at Bethel, at Jericho. Don't be dissuaded by the people that say to you, why don't you stay here? Don't stop because there's a river in front of you that appears to be uncrossable. Just keep walking. And God wants to bring you to that moment of suddenly, where at the exact right moment, at the exact right time, that He answers that prayer, that by faith you have been walking out day after day, week after week, month after month, year after year, maybe even decade after decade. And friends, listen. Just like with Elisha, that God finished the double portion of miracles coming from him even after he was dead and his bones were in the grave. God can still accomplish what He wants to accomplish even after you've left this planet. Just keep walking until God answers or God takes you home. Cling to that promise. So Lord, I pray for my friends today that You would give them bold faith. Just like Enoch, just like Elisha, that they would know what it is that You have called them to. They would know the direction that You've pointed them. And day after day, regardless of obstacles or opposition or what seems like insurmountable odds stacked against them, that they would just keep walking with You. That is the faith that You commend. That is the faith that pleases You, because we believe that not only You exist, but we believe that You delight to answer. You delight to provide. You delight to show Your blessings in our lives. So God, help my friends to keep walking, keep walking, keep walking. Never to settle, but to keep walking in the direction that You've given them. And I pray for my friends as well that maybe the obstacle that's in front of them, the opportunity for Your glory, maybe they haven't had a word from You yet. You haven't laid something on their heart, what the promise is that they can claim. God, as they wait before You and as they continue, as we looked last week, to ask and to seek and to knock, would You reveal that to them? Give them that promise from Your word that they can claim, and then they can just keep walking day after day in expectation of what You're going to do. And I believe that God, even in this lifetime, even in this week, we're going to begin to see people at the right place, at the right time, for You to provide the miracle, the answer that You have foretold. So let us wait in expectation. And let us be quick to give You all the glory for what You're doing. Thank You, Jesus. Amen. I love you, friends. Pray big prayers. Believe God for big things. And just keep walking. God bless you. Have a wonderful week. I love you. See you soon.